Imagine holding a book in your hands that seems to come from another world. Its pages are filled with illustrations of plants that have never been grown on Earth, star charts mapping unknown constellations, and intricate drawings of women bathing in glowing green liquid. But the true mystery lies in the text itself, a flowing script of strange characters and symbols that no one has ever been able to decipher. This isn't a work of fiction. This is the Voynich Manuscript, a real medieval document that has stood as one of history's most impenetrable puzzles for over 6 centuries. From the moment it resurfaced in the early 20th century, this book has challenged brilliant minds, cryptographers, linguists, historians, even codebreakers from world wars, and every single one of them has walked away puzzled. It's been called the world's most mysterious book, and for good reason. Whoever created it left behind a riddle wrapped in an enigma, and to this day no one knows why it was made, what it says, or even who wrote it. What makes the Voynich Manuscript so endlessly fascinating isn't just that it hasn't been solved, it's that it feels personal. It invites you in. You look at those delicate illustrations and you can't help but wonder, was this the secret notebook of a forgotten genius, a magical grimoire, an elaborate hoax that's fooled everyone for hundreds of years? Or something even stranger, this isn't just a historical curiosity, it's a story about human curiosity itself. It's about that deep, almost primal urge to uncover secrets, to solve what seems unsolvable, to understand something that has resisted understanding for generation after generation. And in many ways, that's a journey we can all relate to. We've all faced mysteries in our lives, puzzles that nag at us. The Voynich Manuscript is perhaps the ultimate expression of that, a mystery so grand and so enduring, it almost feels like it's waiting. Waiting for the right person, the right moment, the right idea. So what if I told you that today we're going to step into that mystery together? We're going to explore the strange history of this book, from its sudden appearance in the court of a Holy Roman Emperor to its rediscovery by a Polish book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich. We'll look at the theories from alien languages to lost civilizations and separate compelling ideas from pure fantasy. We'll walk through the pages themselves, examining each bizarre section, and we'll meet the extraordinary people who have dedicated their lives to cracking this code. This is more than a history lesson, it's an adventure, an invitation to join the hunt for answers. So settle in, open your mind, and let's begin. For decades, the manuscript that would become world famous simply did not exist to the outside world. It was a ghost, a secret kept by the silent stone walls of an ancient Italian monastery. Its incredible journey into the light begins not in the Middle Ages, but in the early 20th century, with a man whose own life story was as intriguing as the book he would discover. His name was Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish revolutionary, exiled bookseller, and a man who seemed to have a sixth sense for tracking down lost literary treasures. Having fled imprisonment in Siberia for his political activities, Voynich established himself in London and later New York as a premier dealer in rare books and manuscripts. He wasn't just a merchant, he was a literary detective traveling across Europe, following whispers and rumors to track down volumes that history had forgotten. His most tantalizing lead brought him to Italy in 1912 to the Villa Mondragon. This wasn't just any old building, it was a former papal palace turned Jesuit college, a place overflowing with centuries of accumulated history and, Voynich suspected, hidden literary gold. He had been given permission by the Jesuit fathers to examine a large chest of old books they intended to sell to raise funds for much-needed renovations. The scene is almost cinematic, a dusty, shadowy room, a heavy wooden chest, and a man driven by a passion for the past, carefully sifting through its contents. Most of the books were interesting but unremarkable theological texts, old commentaries. And then, at the very bottom of the chest, his fingers touched something different. He pulled out a peculiar, limp vellum codex, bound in a plain, time-worn parchment cover. It was unlike anything in his extensive experience. The pages were filled from edge to edge with an unknown, elegant script flowing in a strange, rhythmic hand. Alongside the text were breathtakingly bizarre illustrations, naked women bathing in interconnected tubes of shimmering green liquid, fantastical plants with impossible root structures, and intricate astrological diagrams featuring constellations no astronomer would recognize. Voynich, a man who had handled countless medieval manuscripts, immediately knew this was something unprecedented. He later described the moment with palpable excitement, stating he knew he had found the one rare item in the collection, the prize that made the entire arduous journey worthwhile. He purchased the entire chest of books, but his focus was irrevocably locked on this one mysterious volume. He quickly sought out the experts of his day, showing them the find. The initial consensus was that it was indeed very old, likely from the 13th century, but beyond that, no one could offer any answers. The script was a complete cipher. The language, if it was a language at all, was unknown. The subject matter was utterly unclassifiable. Voynich had not merely found an old book, he had stumbled upon a perfect mystery, a locked door from the past for which no one had a key. His discovery ignited a firestorm of interest that has burned for over a century, transforming a forgotten text from a dusty chest into the most famous unsolved cipher in the world. To truly appreciate the mystery of this book, we have to look beyond the strange text and start with the object itself, a physical artifact that has survived for over 600 years. The manuscript is surprisingly small, measuring about 9 inches by 6 inches, and it feels incredibly personal, like a scientist's private notebook or a scholar's deeply personal journal. Its 240 or so vellum pages are bound in a soft, limp parchment cover, a style common for the time, suggesting it was meant to be held, used, and referenced, not just displayed. When you look at high-resolution scans of these pages, the first thing that strikes you is the texture. You can almost feel the thin, durable animal skin, each page a unique piece of hide with its own subtle imperfections and variations in color. This wasn't cheap paper. Vellum was a premium material, indicating that whoever commissioned this book had significant resources. The most concrete fact we have about the manuscript comes from modern science. In 2009, researchers at the University of Arizona performed radiocarbon dating on a few tiny samples of the vellum. The results were definitive. The skin was prepared sometime between 1404 and 1438. This places the book's creation firmly in the early 15th century, a time of immense intellectual ferment in Europe, right on the cusp of the Renaissance. This scientific anchor is crucial because it rules out many modern hoax theories and confirms we are dealing with a genuine medieval artifact. But the science only deepens the core mystery. We know precisely when the canvas was prepared, but we have no idea who painted on it or why. Adding another layer of intrigue are the faint, almost ghostly markings found on the very first page. Under ultraviolet light, previous lines of text become visible, as if someone carefully scrubbed away an ownership inscription. The most prominent of these erased notes appears to read Jacobs Tepenes, a possible reference to Jacobus Horsaki de Tepenec, a Bohemian alchemist and personal physician to Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II. If this was his book, it places the manuscript in one of the most magnificent and eccentric courts in all of Europe, a place obsessed with magic, astronomy, and the occult. But the erasure is deliberate and complete, a purposeful attempt to sever the book from its past, making this potential clue a dead end that only fuels more speculation. Then there is the book's own internal numbering, a system that adds yet another puzzle. The manuscript is assembled from quires, which are small bundles of folded vellum pages stitched together. In the upper right-hand corner of some pages, you can see numbers written in a later, different hand, likely by a 16th century owner trying to make sense of the chaotic order. These numbers suggest that the manuscript might have been rebound at some point, and worse, that pages might have been lost, removed, or shuffled into an incorrect sequence. This means we might not even be looking at the content in the order the original author intended, adding a massive obstacle for anyone trying to find grammatical patterns or a logical narrative flow. Every physical detail of the Voynich manuscript tells a story, but it's a story with the most crucial pages ripped out. The high-quality vellum suggests a wealthy and serious patron. The meticulous, elegant handwriting points to a trained scribe who took great care. The complex illustrations show a mind engaged with botany, astronomy, and something that looks like biology or alchemy. And yet, the erased ownership marks and the scrambled page numbers feel like someone deliberately obscuring the trail, ensuring that this book's origins would remain its most fiercely guarded secret. It is a masterpiece of craft and enigma, a physical thing that has endured the centuries only to ask more questions of us with every passing year. So we have this beautifully crafted physical object from the early 15th century confirmed by science. But the moment you move from the parchment to the marks upon it, you enter a realm that has defied logic for centuries. This is where the Voynich manuscript transforms from a curious antique into what modern codebreakers call the Mount Everest of cryptography, a peak so daunting that even the most brilliant minds have failed to reach its summit. The first and most obvious challenge is the script itself. It's entirely unique. It's not written in any known alphabet like Latin, Arabic, or Hebrew. Instead, it's composed of what scholars have dubbed Voynichese, a flowing script with between 20 and 30 distinct characters. Some look familiar, like odd versions of Latin letters, while others are completely strange loops and curves that don't correspond to anything in our linguistic history. It's written left to right, mostly without any punctuation, no spaces between words, no commas, no periods. The text just flows in an uninterrupted stream of these peculiar characters, which immediately rules out the simple substitution ciphers common in the medieval period, where you just swap one letter for another. Then we get to the words, and this is where things get truly bizarre for anyone trying to analyze it. The structure of these words follows a set of internal rules that are completely alien to any human language we know. In most languages, words have a kind of rhythm. Some letters appear more often at the beginning of words, some in the middle, some at the end. In English, for instance, the letter E is incredibly common, while the sequence X is almost unheard of. Voynichese has its own set of powerful yet nonsensical rules. Certain characters only ever appear at the start of a word, others only appear at the end. And some characters act as a kind of core, almost always appearing in the middle of a word. The most famous example is a character that looks like a number 9, which linguists call gallows characters because of their shape. These are very common, but they almost never appear next to each other. This kind of rigid positional structure is unlike any natural language on Earth. It feels manufactured like a code, but one built on a framework we simply don't understand. This leads to the next great obstacle, the sheer repetition. Statistical analysis shows that the text is oddly repetitive, with some words appearing over and over again, sometimes 3 or 4 times in a single row. Natural languages have something called word entropy, a measure of how unpredictable word sequences are. In a normal book, you can't easily guess what the next word will be. In the Voynich manuscript, the word entropy is extremely low. It's highly predictable, almost like a mantra or an incantation. This has led some to propose it might be a constructed language like Esperanto, but from the 15th century, or perhaps not a language at all, but a complex cipher meant to represent something else entirely. The pedigree of those who have tried and failed to decipher it only adds to its imposing legend. This isn't a puzzle that has only stumped amateurs, it has humbled the very best. When Wilfrid Voynich first brought the manuscript to light, he showed it to the top cryptologists of his day, all of whom were left baffled. Its most famous assault came during and after the Second World War. This was the era of the great code-breaking triumphs, like cracking the German Enigma machine. Teams of cryptanalysts from both the United States and Britain, including William Friedman, one of the greatest codebreakers of the 20th century who helped break the Japanese purple cipher, turned their immense intellectual firepower on the Voynich. These were people who had literally rewritten the book on cryptography. They applied every tool in their arsenal of frequency analysis, pattern recognition, cross-referencing against hundreds of languages. They worked on it for years, and in the end they conceded defeat. Friedman's team concluded that if it was a cipher, it was of a complexity and design far beyond anything else from that period, perhaps using a cipher method that wouldn't be invented for another 400 years. Other theories have risen and fallen over the decades. Some argued it was a shorthand system for a known language, but the word structures don't match any known shorthand. Others proposed it was a hoax, a meaningless set of symbols created to fool a wealthy patron. Yet, the text possesses a statistical complexity that feels intentional. It's not just random scribbles. A meaningless hoax would likely have more random patterns, not the intricate, repetitive structure that Voynich's displays. The most recent hope has been artificial intelligence. In 2018, a team of Canadian researchers used AI to analyze the text, and the system suggested it might be encoded Hebrew. But when human scholars tried to apply this finding, the translations produced were gibberish phrases like, "She made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me for a picture of a plant." The problem persists because an AI can find statistical patterns, but it can't confirm meaning or understand context. It can guess at a language, but it can't tell us if the resulting sentence makes any sense at all. This is the monumental wall that the Voynich Manuscript presents. It's not just one problem, it's a series of interconnected puzzles. It has the visual consistency of a real language, the statistical properties of a complex cipher, and the internal rules of something entirely invented. Every time a new theory gains traction, another layer of the mystery pushes back. The script is unknown, the language is unknown, the subject is unknown. And the author's intention is the greatest unknown of all. To crack it, you wouldn't just need to find a key. You would need to fundamentally understand the mind of the person who built this linguistic fortress, someone who seemingly thought in a way that no one else has for over 600 years. After staring into the abstract patterns of the text itself, the illustrations offer a different kind of clue, a visual entry point into the manuscript's strange universe. And the most immediate and perhaps most mesmerizing section is the one brimming with botanical wonders. This is where the book truly begins to feel like a field guide to an alien planet. Nearly 113 detailed drawings of plants fill these pages, each one accompanied by dense paragraphs of that mysterious text, as if providing names, descriptions, and uses. But these are not the herbs you would find in a medieval garden. These plants are surreal composites with roots that look like animal claws, leaves that morph into intricate geometric patterns, and flowers blooming with impossible layered precision. They feel familiar yet deeply wrong, like a memory of a plant that has been feverishly dreamed into existence. This bizarre botany has fueled some of the most creative theories about the manuscript's origins. One compelling idea is that these are not fantastical inventions at all, but encrypted representations of real plants. The author, perhaps an early scientist or a secretive alchemist, might have been trying to protect valuable knowledge. By combining features of multiple real plants into a single illustration, they could be creating a coded reference. The claw-like root of one drawing might refer to mandrake, known for its human-shaped root, while the peculiar flower could point to a specific orchid. To understand the complete entry, you would need the cipher key to disentangle the visual puzzle and know which real-world plants are being combined and for what purpose. This theory suggests the entire section could be an encrypted pharmacopoeia, a secret book of healing meant only for the eyes of initiates. Of course, the more extraordinary explanation is that these plants are exactly what they appear to be, species that are simply unknown to us. This has led to speculation about extinct flora, perhaps from a lost continent or a remote part of the world that medieval explorers had somehow encountered. An even more fringe, yet persistent, theory suggests an extraterrestrial origin, that the manuscript is a record of biology from another world, left behind or copied by a human who had encountered it. While this makes for captivating science fiction, most serious researchers find it highly unlikely, as the manuscript's materials and style are thoroughly of earthly European origin. The most plausible interpretation, and one that resonates with the intellectual spirit of the early 15th century, is that we are looking at a deeply symbolic alchemical text. In alchemy, plants weren't just physical entities, they were representations of spiritual processes, metallic transformations, and cosmic principles. A drawing of a plant with roots in water and flowers reaching into the sky might not be a literal plant, but a symbolic map for creating the philosopher's stone, depicting the union of the celestial and the terrestrial. The bathing nymphs, often connected to these plants by intricate tubing, could represent the circulation of spiritual energies or the distillation of vital essences. In this view, the botanical section isn't about botany at all. It's a complex allegory, a visual language used to convey hidden spiritual and chemical secrets to those who knew how to read it. This would explain why the plants are unrecognizable. They are ideas, not specimens. Yet for every theory, a new problem emerges. If the plants are encrypted composites, why are they drawn with such delicate, singular beauty, each on its own page as a distinct subject? If they are alchemical symbols, why is there such a staggering variety of them, each with unique and painstakingly rendered details? The very effort invested in making each plant appear like a real, biological entity argues against a purely abstract symbolic purpose. This is the central contradiction of the botanical section. It feels both scientific and symbolic, both a record and a riddle. It draws you in with the promise of recognition. Surely this one looks a little like a sunflower, that one like a fern, only to defy that recognition at every turn. It is a garden of unearthly delights that has become a prison for our understanding, a beautiful, silent testament to a way of seeing the world that we have utterly lost. If the botanical section feels like a journey through an alien greenhouse, then the astronomical section is a trip into a completely different cosmos. This part of the manuscript is dominated by grand, circular diagrams that look like something between medieval astrology charts and sophisticated scientific instruments. They are filled with stars, suns, moons, and again, those enigmatic nymphs, all arranged in concentric rings that seem to suggest motion, cycles, and a celestial order that is both familiar and profoundly strange. It's a part of the book that feels intensely intellectual, as if we're peering over the shoulder of a medieval scholar trying to map the very mechanics of the heavens. The most striking and discussed pages in this section are the 12 zodiac diagrams. Each one is dedicated to a classic astrological sign, from Aries the ram to Pisces the fish. But the Voynich version is like no zodiac you've ever seen. Instead of a single symbol at the center, each diagram features a lavish medallion populated by groups of those now familiar nude women, the so-called nymphs. They are often depicted holding stars, sitting in what look like barrels or baskets, and are connected by an elaborate system of flows and tubes, much like in the biological section. These nymphs are arranged in concentric circles, sometimes up to 30 figures deep, all contained within the larger circle of the diagram itself. It's a mesmerizing and baffling sight. Why are there so many figures? What do the tubes represent? Is this a map of celestial influences, a diagram of cosmic energies flowing through the signs of the zodiac? This bizarre fusion of astrology and biology is one of the manuscript's greatest puzzles. In medieval thought, astrology wasn't mere superstition. It was a serious science that connected the macrocosm of the heavens to the microcosm of the human body. The positions of the stars and planets were believed to influence health, personality, and destiny. The Voynich author seems to be taking this idea to an extreme, visually linking specific celestial patterns, the zodiac, to complex biological or alchemical processes represented by the nymphs. Some researchers propose these pages could be an intricate medical astrological guide, detailing which herbal remedies or bloodletting procedures were most effective under which astrological sign. The nymphs might represent different humors or bodily fluids, with the tubes showing how these fluids circulate under cosmic influence. Beyond the zodiac, other circular diagrams present an even greater challenge to modern interpretation. One famous folio shows a series of 9 concentric rings. The outer rings are packed with stars, while the inner rings contain what appear to be moons in various phases and a central sun or star. The entire structure looks remarkably like a diagram of the solar system, but with a number of spheres that doesn't match the known planets of the time. This has led to wild speculation about ancient knowledge of Uranus or Neptune, but a more grounded theory suggests it could represent a complex medieval calendar system. Each ring might track a different celestial cycle, the solar year, the lunar month, the movement of a specific planet, all integrated into one master chart for calculating dates, religious festivals, or astrologically significant moments. Another compelling idea is that these circles are not literal maps of the sky, but rather schematic diagrams of an alchemical process. In alchemy, the goal was the great work, the transformation of base metals into gold, which was also a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment. This process was often described in stages, each associated with a celestial body and a color. A circular diagram with suns, moons, and stars could be illustrating the phases of this transformation, with each ring representing a different stage of purification and perfection. The nymphs within the zodiac could symbolize the raw materials undergoing this cosmic change, stirred and transformed by the powers of the stars. Yet, for all these fascinating theories, the astronomical section remains as locked away as the rest of the manuscript. The symbols are tantalizingly close to things we recognize, but they are arranged in ways that defy our understanding of 15th century science. The illustrations suggest an author who was deeply engaged with the cutting-edge cosmological ideas of their day, perhaps even possessing knowledge that was ahead of its time, or working within a lost or secretive tradition that blended science, magic, and art into a unique visual language. To look at these pages is to feel the tremendous ambition of the author's intellect, to see a mind attempting to capture the entire universe, both seen and unseen, within the confines of a single mysterious book. Just when you think the Voynich Manuscript can't get any stranger, you turn the page and enter its most infamous and controversial section, a place where science, symbolism, and the human form collide in a way that feels both ancient and eerily ahead of its time. This is the biological section, often called the balneological or balneological biological section, a term derived from the Latin word for bath, but these are no ordinary bath. Spread across several folios, we find a series of intricate pipe-like systems, often colored a vivid, earthy green, filled with what appears to be water or some other liquid. And moving through these elaborate plumbing networks are groups of nude female figures, the figures Wilfrid Voynich himself dubbed nymphs. These nymphs are not presented as mythical goddesses or idealized forms. They are drawn with a straightforward, almost diagrammatic quality. Each one is unique with different hairstyles, facial features, and body types. Some appear young, others older. They are not passive subjects, they are actively engaged with the system. They are crouching in what look like barrels or pods, stepping into and out of the fluid-filled tubes, holding onto star-shaped objects, or interacting with the intricate green pipes that connect them all. The entire arrangement looks less like a relaxing spa and more like a schematic for a mysterious biological or technological process, a complex apparatus where the human body is an integral component. The theories attempting to explain this bizarre imagery are as varied as they are fascinating, each one reflecting a different lens through which to view the medieval mind. One of the most persistent interpretations is that this section represents a form of early reproductive biology or a metaphorical depiction of human conception and gestation. The interconnected tubes could symbolize fallopian tubes, the green fluid representing amniotic fluid or the essence of life itself. The nymphs moving through the system might then represent the soul's journey or the stages of embryonic development. This would be an astonishingly advanced concept for the 15th century, aligning with the work of later anatomists but presented here in a symbolic, almost metaphysical language. A more grounded, yet equally compelling, theory connects these pages directly to the period's practice of balneology, the study of therapeutic bathing. In medieval and Renaissance Europe, bathing was not just for cleanliness. Specific mineral baths and spas were believed to have powerful healing properties. The intricate networks of tubes could represent a sophisticated, perhaps idealized, system for circulating these healing waters. The nymphs might then be patients undergoing a form of hydrotherapy, with each pod or barrel representing a different bath treatment for a different ailment. This theory gained some traction from the fact that many of the tubes seem to originate from or lead to structures that resemble organs or anatomical features, suggesting a direct connection between the bathing process and internal health. For many scholars, however, the most convincing context is alchemical. Alchemy was far more than a primitive attempt at chemistry. It was a rich philosophical and spiritual tradition concerned with transformation and purification. In this view, the entire bizarre apparatus is not literal but symbolic. The green fluid is the primordial prima materia, the base substance of the universe that the alchemist seeks to purify and transform. The nymphs represent different stages of this transformation, perhaps different substances or states of being as they circulate through the alchemical vessel. The process of distillation, central to alchemy, involved repeatedly heating and cooling substances to purify them, and these diagrams could be a symbolic map of that circulatory process, with the female form representing the receptive, nurturing vessel of change. The goal was the creation of the philosopher's stone, and this intricate bath could be a visual allegory for the inner work required to achieve it. Of course, the most speculative theories see in these pages something far more extraordinary. Some have proposed it represents a form of lost technology, an early understanding of hydraulic engineering, or even a symbolic representation of a macro-scale energy system. The more fanciful suggestions lean into the extraterrestrial or ultra-terrestrial, viewing the diagrams as instructions for a rejuvenation chamber or a biological life support system from a lost advanced civilization. While these ideas capture the imagination, they often ignore the manuscript's thoroughly medieval material reality and the clear influence of contemporary philosophical and proto-scientific thought. What makes this section so uniquely powerful and so endlessly debated is its visceral strangeness. The botanical and astronomical sections are odd, but they use a visual language we can somewhat place. We recognize plants and stars even if we don't understand the specifics. The biological section feels entirely other. It presents the human body not as a subject of art or medicine, but as a piece of intricate machinery integrated into a larger, unknowable system. It is both intimate and impersonal, detailed yet utterly cryptic. The author took immense care in drawing each nymph and each connecting tube, implying a profound importance to this process, whatever it was. We are left staring at a diagram for a machine whose purpose we cannot fathom, a recipe for a transformation we cannot begin to comprehend, forever capturing a moment where the boundaries between the body, the spirit, and the cosmos were seemingly woven together into one beautiful, inexplicable green web. Tucked away among the swirling galaxies and impossible plants are pages that feel strikingly practical, almost like stepping into a medieval apothecary's workshop. This is the so-called pharmaceutical section, and it offers a different flavor of mystery altogether. Here, the grand cosmic diagrams and intricate plumbing give way to something that feels more familiar. Dozens upon dozens of carefully drawn jars, pots, and containers, each one accompanied by a drawn plant part, a root, a leaf, a flower, and of course those persistent paragraphs of unreadable text. It's a part of the manuscript that seems to whisper of recipes, of ointments and tinctures, of practical knowledge meant to heal or transform. The jars themselves are a fascinating study. They aren't all the same. They are drawn in various styles, some simple and others highly ornate, suggesting different purposes or perhaps different substances they were meant to hold. Some look like simple ceramic pots, the kind you might find on any herbalist's shelf. Others are more elaborate, resembling the specialized glassware of an alchemist's laboratory, with long necks and round bodies designed for distillation. Laid beside them, like ingredients waiting to be prepared, are the plant parts. This is a crucial detail. Unlike the full, fantastical plants in the botanical section, these are fragments. A single root here, a cluster of leaves there. This shift in focus strongly implies a process, moving from identifying a plant to utilizing a specific part of it. This visual language immediately brings to mind known medieval medical texts like the Herbals of Dioscorides or the many practical remedy books that circulated among physicians. These works were the medical textbooks of their day, detailing which plants to use for which ailments, how to prepare them, and in what dosage. If the Voynich Manuscript is a similar guide, then its unreadable text could be those very instructions, the recipes themselves locked away in cipher. The purpose for such secrecy could be immense. Knowledge was power, and a book containing highly effective, perhaps even revolutionary, medical formulas would be a treasure worth protecting from competitors or condemnation from the church. Perhaps it contains remedies based on forbidden knowledge or formulas for poisons alongside their antidotes, making its contents incredibly dangerous in the wrong hands. But the setting of these jars also suggests another, more mystical purpose. They aren't just sitting on a shelf, they are often presented in a row or arranged in a way that feels deliberate, almost ceremonial. This is where the line between medicine and alchemy becomes blurry, as it often did in the 15th century. For an alchemist, the process of creating medicine was spiritual work. The jar wasn't just a container, it was a vessel for transformation. The plant root inside might symbolize a base earthly material, and the process of creating a tincture from it was a microcosm of the alchemical great work, purifying the earthly into the spiritual. In this light, the pharmaceutical section might not be a literal guide to making cough syrup, but a symbolic map for creating the elixir of life, a substance believed to grant immortality. Each jar could represent a different stage in this sacred process, and the plant part a symbolic ingredient in a formula that is as much about spiritual enlightenment as it is about physical health. What makes this section so tantalizing and so frustrating is that it represents our best chance to potentially cross-reference the manuscript with the known world. Scholars have attempted to match the drawn plant parts with real flora, hoping to find a key. Does that peculiarly shaped root belong to a known medicinal plant like mandrake or ginseng? If we could just identify one, we might be able to link a Voynich word to a real substance. Furthermore, the arrangement of the jars and roots sometimes bears a passing resemblance to charts in other texts that show which plants are governed by which planets, a core belief of medical astrology. Perhaps the text isn't just a recipe, but a timing guide, instructions on when to harvest and prepare the root under a specific astrological sign to maximize its potency. Yet, as with everything in this book, certainty remains just out of reach. The plant parts are just as strange and composite as their full-bodied counterparts in the earlier section. The root might look almost recognizable, but it has an extra tuber or an odd color that makes a positive identification impossible. The jars hint at a practical purpose, but their presentation is just abstract enough to sustain the alchemical interpretation. This section feels like the Rosetta Stone of the Voynich Manuscript, the part that looks the most like something we know from history. It holds the promise of a breakthrough, a direct line to the author's intent. But until we can read the labels on those jars, we are left standing outside the apothecary's door, unable to tell if the secrets inside are meant to cure the body, elevate the soul, or something far more extraordinary that we have yet to even consider. After the intricate diagrams and strange imagery, we encounter the most text-heavy part of the entire manuscript, pages so dense with writing they feel less like a book and more like a vault of secrets. These are the infamous recipe pages, and they present a challenge entirely different from the visual puzzles that came before. Here, the elegant script flows in tight, unbroken paragraphs, one after another, with only the occasional star-like character in the margin to break the relentless stream of Voyniches. They look for all the world like a set of complex instructions, a meticulous list of steps for a process of immense importance. The very format of these pages screams of practicality. It's the same visual structure you would find in any number of 15th century practical handbooks, textbooks for artists explaining how to mix pigments, manuals for scribes detailing the preparation of ink and vellum, or most compellingly, the recipe books of alchemists and apothecaries. These were the cookbooks of natural philosophy, filled with formulas that began with phrases like "take 3 ounces of," or "heat the mixture until it achieves the color of a peacock's tail." The Voynich recipe section has that same authoritative, step-by-step feel, but with the crucial ingredients and quantities locked away behind its impenetrable cipher. This layout strongly suggests we are not looking at a philosophical treatise or a work of fiction, but a functional document meant to be used, a guide for creating something tangible. This immediately raises the thrilling possibility that the manuscript is a book of secrets, a highly guarded compilation of formulas for creating everything from revolutionary medicines to the legendary goals of alchemy. Imagine a book containing the formula for the philosopher's stone, capable of turning lead into gold, or the elixir of life, promising health and immortality. In the cutthroat intellectual world of the Renaissance, such knowledge would be more valuable than any kingdom. It would be a treasure worth encoding in a cipher of devastating complexity to protect it from rivals, the church, or any unworthy eyes. The author wouldn't just be protecting a recipe, they would be protecting power itself. The sheer effort of creating the manuscript, the costly vellum, the exquisite illustrations, the painstakingly consistent script would be a worthy investment for secrets of that magnitude. The content of these recipes likely sits at the fascinating intersection of science, medicine, and magic that defined the era. A single paragraph could be instructions for distilling a potent painkiller from a rare herb, a process that would appear miraculous to contemporaries. The next might detail the creation of a dazzling new pigment for an artist's palette, a valuable trade secret, and yet another could describe a spiritual practice, a recipe not for a physical potion but for an inner transformation, using alchemical metaphors to describe a journey of enlightenment. This was a time when the material and the spiritual were not separate domains. To cure an illness, you might need to align the patient's humors under the correct planetary influence. Therefore, these dense blocks of text could be weaving together physical instructions with astrological timing and spiritual invocations, creating a multi-layered formula that is completely incomprehensible to our modern, compartmentalized way of thinking. This theory of encrypted practical knowledge is perhaps the most compelling because it explains the author's powerful motivation for such extreme secrecy. It wasn't just about being clever, it was about survival and success. In an age where a new medical discovery could lead to accusations of witchcraft, or a claim of alchemical success could attract the dangerous attention of a greedy prince, encoding your life's work was the ultimate form of intellectual property protection. The Voynich Manuscript, then, is not necessarily a book of nonsense designed to deceive. It may be the opposite, a work of profound importance, so valuable that its creator went to extraordinary lengths to ensure its secrets would only be revealed to someone who possessed the key, a key that, it seems, was lost to history the moment the book was closed. We are left staring at what may be the complete instructions for achieving the deepest dreams of the Renaissance mind, written in a language we can see but cannot read, a permanent testament to the fierce desire to both discover and conceal the most powerful secrets of the natural world. To truly understand the Voynich Manuscript, we must step away from our modern perspective and journey back to the world in which it was actually created, the tumultuous, transformative, and intellectually voracious early 15th century. This was not the so-called Dark Ages. It was a period crackling with new ideas, a time perched precariously on the fulcrum between medieval thought and the dawning Renaissance. Europe was a patchwork of feuding kingdoms, powerful city-states, and influential courts, all connected by a growing web of trade and the shared, if often contested, language of the Church. Knowledge was a rare and powerful currency, fiercely protected and often hidden behind layers of symbolism and secrecy. This was the golden age of alchemy and hermetic philosophy, systems of thought that saw the entire universe as an interconnected whole. To an alchemist, the movement of the stars was directly tied to the growth of a plant, which was in turn connected to the humors of the human body. The goal was nothing less than the perfection of matter and spirit, transforming base lead into gold and the base human soul into an enlightened state. This wasn't mere superstition, it was a sophisticated, if flawed, scientific framework. In this light, the Voynich Manuscript's bizarre fusion of astronomy, biology, and botany begins to make a strange kind of sense. It could be a working notebook for this great work, a visual and textual guide to understanding and manipulating these hidden connections within nature. The green, flowing tubes of the biological section might represent the circulation of the vital life force, the spiritus mundi, while the Zodiac nymphs could chart how this cosmic energy influences the physical world. Simultaneously, the practice of herbalism and early medicine was undergoing its own revolution. Practical knowledge of plants was essential for survival, used by physicians, apothecaries, and midwives to treat everything from fevers to battlefield wounds. Books of secrets containing guarded recipes for medicines, dyes, and cosmetics were highly prized possessions. The Voynich's pharmaceutical pages, with their rows of jars and specific plant parts, fit perfectly into this tradition. If the manuscript originated in a place like northern Italy or the court of a Central European emperor, it could represent the pinnacle of this practical knowledge. Its encryption wouldn't be paranoia, it would be standard practice. A revolutionary remedy for plague or a potent new anesthetic would be a secret worth protecting, a source of immense prestige, wealth, and power for its owner. The cipher ensures that only those within a trusted circle, perhaps a specific guild, a monastic order, or a prince's inner court, could access its valuable content. The physical and cultural geography of its possible origins adds another layer of intrigue. The carbon dating places its creation right in the middle of the Italian Renaissance, a hotbed of artistic and scientific innovation. It could be the product of a brilliant, idiosyncratic mind in a city like Milan or Venice, a scholar inspired by the new spirit of inquiry but still working within older, esoteric traditions. Alternatively, the erased ownership mark pointing to the court of Emperor Rudolf II in Prague a century later is a tantalizing clue. Rudolf's court was a legendary cabinet of curiosities, a gathering place for the greatest astronomers, alchemists, and magicians of Europe, all sponsored by an emperor obsessed with the occult and the boundaries of knowledge. In such an environment, a strange, encrypted book would not be out of place. It would be the ultimate collectible, a treasure whose value was measured by its profound mystery. The manuscript may not have been created there, but it found a home where it was appreciated not for what it said, but for the tantalizing promise of what it might contain. Ultimately, the Voynich Manuscript is a perfect reflection of its time, a period when the boundaries between science, magic, and art were fluid and blurred. It embodies the relentless curiosity of the age, the drive to categorize and understand the natural world, but it also reflects the pervasive culture of secrecy that protected valuable knowledge from rivals and religious authorities. It is not an anomaly, it is a profound expression of the 15th century intellectual spirit. Its greatest mystery may not be its text, but the fact that it represents a whole way of seeing the universe that we have since abandoned, a lost language of thought that wove together the stars, the soil, and the human soul into a single, magnificent, and inexplicable tapestry. Despite its aura of timeless mystery, the Voynich Manuscript does bear a few faint, tantalizing fingerprints from its past. One of the most compelling starts on the very first page, hidden in plain sight until modern technology revealed it. Under ultraviolet light, a previous owner's inscription, carefully scraped away centuries ago, becomes visible. It reads Jacobus Tepanes, a Latinized reference to Jacobus Horsecki de Tepanek. This wasn't just any nobleman, he was a distinguished Bohemian alchemist, distiller, and most importantly, the personal physician to one of the most fascinating rulers in European history, Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II. To understand the significance of this erased name, we must understand the court to which it points. In the late 16th and early 17th centuries, Rudolf's court in Prague was less a center of political power and more a magnificent theater of the mind. The emperor himself was a reclusive and deeply curious man, a passionate collector not of conquests but of wonders. He assembled the most spectacular Kunstkammer, or cabinet of curiosities, in all of Europe, filled with scientific instruments, astronomical clocks, exotic animal specimens, and artworks by masters like Bruegel and Dürer. More importantly, he gathered the greatest thinkers of the age, especially those who dwelled on the border between science and magic. His court was a haven for astronomers like Tycho Brahe and Johannes Kepler, for the legendary magician Edward Kelly, and for alchemists like John Dee and, of course, Jacobus Horsecki. Horsecki was a celebrated figure in his own right. He was a master pharmacist who had created a famous aqua sinapius, or synap water, a healing balsam that earned him a title of nobility, hence de Tepanek. For a man of such standing to possess the Voynich Manuscript makes perfect sense. In Rudolf's Prague, a book filled with unreadable text and diagrams of cosmic and biological mysteries would have been the ultimate collectible, a treasure whose value was measured by its profound obscurity. It would have been studied, pored over, and revered not as a hoax, but as a profound text containing lost secrets that the emperor's brilliant courtiers were desperate to recover. The erasure of his name is itself a mystery. Perhaps it was scrubbed out by a later owner who wished to sever the book's history, or maybe it was done to protect his association with such a potent and potentially heretical object. The connection to Rudolf's court is bolstered by a second, more cryptic clue found in a letter penned in 1666. The rector of Charles University in Prague, Johannes Marcus Marci, sent the manuscript to the renowned Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher, hoping he could decipher it. In his letter, Marci relays a fascinating story. He claims that the book once belonged to Emperor Rudolf, who had purchased it for the staggering sum of 600 gold ducats. To put that in perspective, that was enough money to purchase a luxurious townhouse in Prague or fund a substantial royal commission. No one would pay such an astronomical amount for a meaningless forgery. This rumor suggests that Rudolf and his circle firmly believed the manuscript was genuine, an artifact of immense hidden knowledge. I further stated that the book was believed to be the work of the 13th century English Franciscan friar and polymath Roger Bacon, a figure often associated with occult and proto-scientific ideas centuries ahead of his time. This attribution, though almost certainly incorrect, shows how its early owners were already weaving a legend around it, trying to anchor its mysteries to a known genius of the past. The manuscript's journey after Rudolf's chaotic reign and the sacking of Prague in 1648 is murky, but it eventually found its way into the care of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. This is how it ended up in that chest at the Villa Mondragon, waiting for Wilfrid Voynich. The Jesuits, a powerful and intellectual order, were known for their extensive libraries and their engagement with both theological and scientific texts. Their possession of the manuscript suggests it was still considered an object of serious study, or at least significant curiosity rather than a dismissed oddity. They held onto it for centuries, yet no record indicates they ever attempted to decipher it or even particularly valued it, eventually selling it off with a batch of other books. Each of these ownership clues paints a vivid picture of the manuscript's life before its modern fame. It wasn't lost in an attic or buried in a field. It was cherished by some of the most intellectually ambitious and esoterically minded figures of the Renaissance. It moved through the highest circles of occult science, from an emperor's wondrous collection to an alchemist's private stash, and finally into the vast archives of a learned religious order. This provenance doesn't tell us what the book says, but it powerfully argues for what it was perceived to be, a work of profound importance. These were not gullible fools. They were among the smartest men of their age, and they believed they were holding a key to a deeper understanding of the universe. Their failed attempts to unlock it only add to the magnitude of the mystery, proving that this puzzle has challenged the finest intellects for centuries, long before it ever became a modern phenomenon. When Wilfrid Voynich first brought the manuscript into the light, he wasn't just holding a mystery, he was holding a question that demanded an answer. And for him, that answer had a name: Roger Bacon. The theory that this 13th century English Franciscan friar was the author became the first great narrative woven around the book, a story so compelling it would dominate the early decades of its study. Bacon was no ordinary monk. He was a veritable supernova of intellectual energy, a man whose mind seemed to operate centuries ahead of his time. He wrote extensively on optics, astronomy, and alchemy. He described the potential for flying machines, powerful lenses that could see distant objects, and even horseless carriages. Most importantly for Voynich, Bacon was a known advocate for and practitioner of cryptography. In his writings, Bacon explicitly stated that a man of science should conceal his discoveries through secret writing to avoid persecution from the ignorant or from church authorities. Here was a perfect candidate, a brilliant, secretive scientist who lived just before the manuscript's vellum was even created. Voynich became utterly convinced of this theory. He poured immense energy into promoting it, seeing in Roger Bacon a kindred spirit, a revolutionary mind forced to operate in the shadows. The theory provided a romantic and satisfying origin story. It elevated the manuscript from a mere curiosity to the lost masterpiece of a forgotten genius. Imagine the power of that idea, a book containing the encrypted, revolutionary scientific discoveries of a man who foresaw the microscope and the telescope, hidden away to protect knowledge too advanced for its own time. This narrative captivated the public imagination and drew some of the first serious cryptanalysts to the puzzle, all operating under the assumption that they were unraveling the secrets of a known historical titan. The appeal of the Bacon theory is easy to understand. It gives the manuscript a prestigious pedigree and a clear motive for encryption. Bacon's known interests align loosely with the manuscript's content. His work in natural philosophy involved studying plants and the stars. His forays into alchemy sought the secrets of matter and life. The bizarre biological sections could be his speculative diagrams of human anatomy or processes of purification. For a time, it seemed like the perfect fit. Voynich even enlisted the help of William Romain Newbold, a philosophy professor at the University of Pennsylvania, who claimed to have cracked the cipher and revealed profound Baconian secrets, including descriptions of microscopic cells and spiral nebulae. Newbold's decipherments, however, were soon exposed as wishful thinking, a complex series of errors and subjective interpretations that ultimately proved nothing and severely damaged the theory's credibility. The final, most decisive blow to the Roger Bacon theory came not from linguistic analysis but from hard science. The radiocarbon dating performed in 2009 was the stake through the heart of this particular idea. The vellum pages were definitively dated to the early 15th century, between 1404 and 1438. Roger Bacon died in 1294, over a century before the animal was even born whose skin would become the manuscript's pages. This evidence is unambiguous and incontrovertible. The book simply could not have been physically created by Bacon. While it's not entirely impossible that it could be a later copy of a lost Baconian original, this stretches credibility. The style of the illustrations, the script, and the overall composition are all consistent with the early 15th century dating of the vellum. There is no evidence of it being a copy of an earlier work. So why does the ghost of Roger Bacon still haunt the Voynich manuscript? His legacy persists because he represents the archetype of the author we feel the book should have. A brilliant, persecuted, forward-thinking mind working in secret to protect dangerous knowledge. The truth is, the real author may have been someone very much like Bacon, just 100 years later, a figure lost to history operating in the same intellectual tradition. The Bacon theory, though debunked, was crucial. It set the stage for all future inquiry by establishing the manuscript as an object worthy of serious scholarly attention. It framed the debate not as a search for a hoaxer, but as a hunt for a genius. In the end, the story of this theory is a cautionary tale about the human desire to attach a famous name to a profound mystery, a reminder that the truth of the Voynich may be found not in the biography of a known luminary, but in the forgotten story of an equally extraordinary, yet anonymous mind. But if the manuscript wasn't the work of a genius like Roger Bacon, could its origin story be far less noble? What if this beautifully crafted, 600-year-old puzzle is nothing more than an elaborate and incredibly successful con? This is the hoax hypothesis, a theory that suggests the Voynich manuscript is a meaningless fabrication, an artistic forgery designed to separate a wealthy patron from his gold. And the prime suspect in this centuries-old crime is one of history's most charming and notorious scoundrels, Edward Kelly. Kelly was a man straight out of a Renaissance thriller. An English occultist, alchemist, and self-proclaimed spirit medium, he was also a convicted forger who had his ears cropped as punishment for the crime, a fact he carefully hid beneath a cap or long hair. He found his greatest patron in none other than Emperor Rudolph II, whom he and his partner, the scholar John Dee, enthralled with demonstrations of angelic communication and promises of the secret to transmuting base metals into gold. Kelly was a master showman, a psychological manipulator who knew exactly how to appeal to Rudolph's obsessions. He was precisely the kind of man who would have the audacity, the skill, and the motive to create the Voynich manuscript. The proposed scam is classic Kelly. He could have commissioned a skilled scribe and artist to create a breathtakingly mysterious book filled with an undecipherable script and fantastical imagery. He would then present it to the emperor as a lost work of immense power, perhaps even claiming it was by Roger Bacon himself, containing the very secrets of the Philosopher's Stone. For a ruler who collected wonders and desperately sought alchemical mastery, such a book would be irresistible. The rumored sale price of 600 gold ducats fits this narrative perfectly. It's exactly the kind of extravagant sum a confident conman would demand from his richest and most gullible mark. The subsequent erasure of Jacobus Horsecki's name could even be explained as Kelly covering his tracks, removing evidence of the book's previous, more mundane ownership to preserve its aura of ancient mystery. On the surface, the hoax theory is deeply appealing. It provides a simple, cynical, and human explanation for the mystery. It doesn't require us to believe in lost languages or alien botany. It just requires us to believe in human greed and gullibility. It turns the manuscript from an intellectual Everest into a historical curiosity, a prank that got wildly out of hand. For many, this feels like a more satisfying answer than an unsolvable cipher. Yet, when we subject this theory to the same scrutiny as the manuscript itself, it begins to unravel at an astonishing speed. The first and most powerful argument against a hoax is the sheer, mind-boggling consistency of the text. Modern computational linguists have analyzed Voynich's with powerful software and found it exhibits a property known as Zipf's law. This is a statistical principle found in all natural human languages where the most frequent word will appear approximately twice as often as the second most frequent word, 3 times as often as the third, and so on. This isn't a pattern a human forger can easily fabricate by hand, creating thousands of words of gibberish that perfectly mimic the deep, complex structural rules of a real language, with distinct character preferences for the start, middle, and end of words, is a task of monumental difficulty, far beyond the capabilities of even the most patient 16th-century scam artist. A forger would likely have repeated a few convincing-looking words or patterns, eventually falling into repetitive or random sequences that would be easily spotted by modern analysis. The Voynich text does neither. It maintains its bizarre internal logic with flawless consistency from the first page to the last. Then we must consider the cost and effort. The manuscript is made of high-quality vellum, a hugely expensive material requiring the skins of dozens of animals. The illustrations are meticulous, and the script is elegantly and uniformly executed. This represents hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of highly skilled labor. Commissioning such a work would have been a massive financial investment for Kelly. Why would a conman sink a fortune into creating the prop for a scam, especially when Rudolph was already buying his stories about talking to angels without any physical evidence? It would be like counterfeiting $1 million in order to scam someone out of 1,000. The economics of the hoax simply don't add up. Furthermore, the carbon dating creates a serious problem for the Kelly theory. The vellum dates to the early 15th century, over 150 years before Kelly was even born. This means the book is genuinely old. At best, Kelly could have been a later owner who perhaps added some annotations, but he could not have been its original creator. The manuscript's existence predates him, and the core mystery of its origin and purpose remains untouched by his potential involvement as a seller. He may have been an opportunistic middleman who recognized a strange old book and saw a chance to upsell it to a desperate emperor, but that is a far cry from being the mastermind behind its creation. The hoax theory, while a captivating story, ultimately feels like an attempt to solve a 21st century mystery with a 16th century mindset. It underestimates the breathtaking complexity of the text and overestimates the capabilities and motives of a historical forger. The Voynich Manuscript is either one of the most sophisticated and pointless artistic endeavors in history, requiring a skill set and dedication that rivals the greatest works of the Renaissance for no discernible reward, or it is exactly what it appears to be, a serious attempt to communicate. The evidence overwhelmingly suggests the latter. It points toward an author who is not trying to deceive, but to preserve and protect a system of knowledge so valuable, so potent, or so dangerous that it required the construction of an entire linguistic universe to keep it safe. The real hoax isn't the manuscript, it's the comforting idea that such a profound mystery could have so simple an answer. Yet for all the weight of history and the allure of conspiracy, the most compelling evidence that the Voynich manuscript contains a genuine message comes not from its pictures or its provenance, but from the cold, hard light of mathematical analysis. When traditional code-breaking and linguistic intuition failed, researchers turned to the emerging science of information theory, applying statistical tools to measure the text's fundamental properties. And what they found was astonishing. The text, for all its strangeness, behaves in many ways just like a real human language. This discovery didn't solve the mystery, but it completely transformed it, shifting the debate from whether the manuscript was meaningful to how its meaning was so ingeniously concealed. The cornerstone of this analysis is a principle called Zipf's law, named after the Harvard linguist George Kingsley Zipf. He discovered a fascinating pattern that holds true across every natural human language ever studied. It states that the most frequently used word in a language will appear roughly twice as often as the second most frequent word, 3 times as often as the third, and so on. If you plot this on a graph with word rank on one axis and frequency on the other, you get a very specific, clean curve that slopes downward. This isn't something writers do consciously. It's an emergent property of how human communication works. When researchers ran this test on the Voynich manuscript, the results were electrifying. The text followed Zipf's law almost perfectly. This was a bombshell. It meant that whatever Voynichese was, it had the same statistical heartbeat as English, Latin, or Chinese. Creating a fake language that mimics this deep, complex pattern by hand over 240 pages would be a task of superhuman mathematical precision, far beyond the capability of any medieval forger. This finding propelled the manuscript into the modern era, attracting the attention of the greatest codebreakers of the 20th century. Chief among them was William Friedman, a legendary cryptanalyst who had led the team that cracked the Japanese purple cipher during World War II. After the war, Friedman assembled a group of top-tier intelligence analysts, dubbing them the First Voynich Study Group. They approached the manuscript with every tool they had honed during the war: frequency analysis, pattern recognition, cross-referencing against known languages and cipher types. Friedman himself was initially optimistic, believing that the same methods that had defeated Axis codes could unravel this ancient puzzle. His team made some progress, noting the rigid positional rules of the script, how certain characters only ever appeared at the beginnings of words, others only at the ends. They even developed a provisional alphabet, a system of transliterating the strange symbols into Roman letters to make analysis easier, a system still used by researchers today. But after years of intense effort, even Friedman's brilliant team had to concede defeat. They concluded that if it was a cipher, it was of a type and complexity utterly unknown to modern cryptography, perhaps employing a method that wouldn't be formally invented for centuries. In a fascinating twist, the work on the Voynich ultimately led Friedman to pioneer a new field of study: the science of cryptolinguistics, forever changed by his encounter with this unyielding text. The baton was later picked up by Prescott Currier, a U.S. Navy cryptologist who in the 1970s made another startling discovery. He noticed that the handwriting and statistical properties of the text weren't uniform throughout the manuscript. He identified what he called Currier A and Currier B, 2 distinct hands or styles of writing, each with its own unique set of character frequencies and behaviors. This suggested that more than one scribe was involved in the book's creation, a fact that argues powerfully against a hoax. A forger wouldn't bother with such a meticulous and hidden collaboration. They would simply produce the fake text as quickly as possible. This finding pointed toward a genuine, collaborative project, perhaps a master and an apprentice, or a scholar dictating to a trained scribe. The latest chapter in this linguistic saga involves artificial intelligence. In 2018, a team of researchers from the University of Alberta used a sophisticated AI algorithm to analyze the text. The system, designed to identify the language of origin of unknown texts, was fed the Voynich manuscript. After comparing its patterns to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in over 400 languages, the AI's best guess was that the underlying language was Hebrew. Furthermore, it suggested the text might be constructed using an alphabetic cipher, where each Voynich character represents a letter in the Hebrew alphabet with the vowels omitted, a common practice in Semitic languages. For a moment, it seemed like the breakthrough had finally arrived, but when human scholars attempted to apply this model, the results were disappointing. The translations were largely incoherent, producing phrases like, "She made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me," for a page illustrating a star chart. The problem highlights the limitation of pure statistics. An AI can find patterns, but it cannot confirm meaning or understand context. It can suggest a language, but it can't tell us if the resulting sentence makes any sense. So where does this leave us? The statistical evidence is overwhelming that the Voynich manuscript is not random gibberish. It has the structure of a natural language, the complexity of a sophisticated cipher, and the fingerprints of multiple authors. It is a genuine message, carefully encoded, yet every key we try, whether it's Hebrew, Latin, or a forgotten dialect, fails to turn the lock. This persistent failure suggests something profound. We may not just be missing the key, we may be missing the entire lock. We are likely trying to read the text through the lens of our own linguistic assumptions, when the author was operating from a completely different framework, one that wove together science, symbolism, and magic into a unified language of thought that the modern world has simply forgotten how to speak. The patterns are there, clear as day in the data, whispering that the secret is real, but they remain a whisper, a promise of meaning that has yet to reveal its true voice. The story of the Voynich manuscript is as much about its seekers as the secret itself. A century-long drama featuring some of the most brilliant and determined minds ever to tackle a puzzle. This wasn't a quiet academic curiosity. It became a personal obsession, a siren call to those who lived to solve the unsolvable. And no one embodied this quest more than William Friedman and his wife Elizabeth. William wasn't just any codebreaker, he was a legend, the architect of modern American cryptography. He led the team that shattered Japan's purple cipher during World War II, a feat that saved countless lives and shortened the war. After such a monumental victory, one might think he'd earned a rest, but for Friedman, the Voynich represented the ultimate challenge, a peak beyond any he had summited. In the 1940s and 50s, he assembled a secret group of the very best analysts from the war effort, dubbing them the first Voynich study group. They attacked the problem with every weapon in their arsenal: frequency analysis, pattern recognition, and cross-referencing against hundreds of languages and historical cipher types. These were people who had outsmarted machines. Surely they could outsmart a medieval book. Friedman himself was initially convinced it was a cipher, and he even developed a system to transliterate the strange symbols into Roman letters, a system still used by researchers today. Yet, after years of painstaking work, the manuscript refused to yield. In a stunning admission of defeat, the greatest codebreaker of his generation concluded that if it was a cipher, it was of a complexity and design far beyond anything else from its era, perhaps using a method that wouldn't be formally invented for another 400 years. The work, however, was not in vain. His fascination with the manuscript's unique properties led him to pioneer an entirely new field: cryptolinguistics, the science of studying the linguistic patterns within codes. The Voynich had defeated him, but in doing so, it forever changed the landscape of his profession. The Friedmans were the standard bearers, but they were far from the only ones drawn into the manuscript's orbit. The 20th century became a parade of hopeful decipherers, each with a new theory, each with the unwavering belief that they had seen what others had missed. There was Prescott Currier, another top US Navy cryptologist, who in the 1970s made a crucial discovery: the manuscript wasn't written in one uniform hand. He identified two distinct cryptographic languages or styles within the text, which he named Courier A and Courier B. This suggested that at least two different scribes were involved in its creation, a finding that argued powerfully against the hoax theory. Why would a forger go to the elaborate trouble of a meticulous collaboration? Courier's work added a new layer of mystery, implying a project of significant importance that required multiple participants. Then came the more controversial figures, like the man who claimed to have solved it in a blaze of public glory. In 2017, Nicholas Gibbs, a history enthusiast and television writer, published an article in the Times literary supplement announcing he had cracked the code. His theory was that the manuscript was a mostly plagiarized women's health manual, a Trotula-derived compendium with sections on herbal remedies, astrology, and bathing. He claimed the text was a highly abbreviated form of Latin, with the Voynich characters acting as ligatures for common words and phrases. The media exploded with the news. After centuries, the mystery was finally solved. But within days, the excitement crumbled. Academic specialists and linguists universally panned Gibbs's work. His translations were vague and often nonsensical. He provided no consistent key that could be applied to the entire text, and his claims about the illustrations were easily debunked by existing scholarship. The episode was a classic case of a convincing narrative overwhelming a lack of solid evidence, a reminder of how the Voynich Manuscript's allure can sometimes override critical rigor. Beyond the headlines, the real work continues in a quieter, more collaborative way. Today, the quest has moved online with dedicated forums, wikis, and digital communities where amateur and professional sleuths from around the world share ideas, run complex algorithms, and pore over high-resolution scans. This is a collective effort, a distributed network of curiosity working on a puzzle that has humbled geniuses. They represent the latest chapter in this long story, proving that the manuscript's power to captivate is undiminished. Whether it's a team of wartime codebreakers applying cutting-edge science or a lone researcher spending late nights at their kitchen table, the pattern is the same: an initial surge of confidence, followed by months or years of grinding analysis, and ultimately the manuscript's serene, silent resistance. Each failed attempt, from Friedman to Gibbs to the countless unknowns, adds another brick to the legend. They are not just failures, they are tributes to the ingenuity of the author, proof that the person who crafted this puzzle built a fortress for their secrets that has so far proven impregnable to every army that has ever besieged it. Yet the manuscript's journey from academic puzzle to cultural icon truly began with its rediscovery and the dawn of the mass media age. Wilfrid Voynich himself was a master of promotion, skillfully weaving the Roger Bacon narrative to capture newspaper headlines and public fascination. This wasn't just an obscure medieval text anymore. It was a real-life detective story, a cliffhanger waiting for its final chapter. As the decades passed and the world's greatest minds continued to fail, the manuscript's legend only grew, transforming it into a blank canvas upon which anyone could project their wildest theories and most imaginative stories. It became less about what the book actually was, and more about what it could represent: the ultimate unsolvable problem, the perfect metaphor for the unknown. This fertile ground gave rise to some of the most extravagant and enduring conspiracy theories. For those who believe we are not alone, the Voynich Manuscript is a prime piece of evidence. Its unearthly plants and strange biological diagrams are seen as a catalogue of extraterrestrial flora and anatomy, a field guide to life on another world, perhaps left behind by visitors or channeled by a human contactee. The theory posits that the text is written in an alien language, its structure so foreign because it is literally not of this earth. Similarly, the idea of a lost civilization like Atlantis provides another compelling framework. The unknown script and bizarre illustrations are interpreted as the last surviving record of a sophisticated culture that was wiped out, preserving advanced knowledge of medicine, astronomy, and energy systems that we have since forgotten. These theories, while scientifically baseless, are powerfully seductive because they offer a grand, sweeping explanation for something that otherwise feels frustratingly random. The world of secret societies has also claimed the manuscript as its own. For conspiracy buffs, it's the ultimate sacred text of the Rosicrucians, the Priory of Sion, or a forgotten alchemical guild. In this view, the book isn't just containing secrets, it is the secret. Its indecipherable nature is the whole point, a test for the uninitiated and a litmus test for worthiness. Only those with the correct esoteric knowledge, passed down through generations of initiates, could possibly hope to unlock its meaning. The very act of trying to solve it becomes a kind of modern-day alchemical quest for enlightenment, a ritualized search for hidden knowledge that is valuable precisely because it is hidden. This transforms the manuscript from a historical object into a living, breathing artifact of power within the shadowy realms of occult lore. This pervasive cultural presence has inevitably seeped into our entertainment, making the Voynich a recurring character in novels, films, and games. It appears as a central plot device in countless thrillers, from Catherine Neville's The Fire to the Book of Blood and Shadow by Robin Wasserman. In these stories, it's often the key to finding a world-altering relic or preventing an apocalyptic event, its code protecting earth-shattering secrets. The video game world has embraced it with equal enthusiasm. In games like the Elder Scrolls series, entire fictional languages and ancient books are directly inspired by its look and feel, offering players a chance to engage with a Voynich-like mystery themselves. Television shows from Supernatural to Gravity Falls have used it as a shorthand for impenetrable, ancient magic, a book so powerful and dangerous that it must be kept locked away. This pop culture footprint is a testament to the manuscript's unique power. It has achieved something rare. It is both a real, physical object studied by serious academics and a legendary symbol of the unexplainable. It serves as a universal shortcut for mystery, a prop that instantly communicates to an audience that the characters are dealing with something ancient, powerful, and beyond normal understanding. This dual existence actually fuels the ongoing serious research. The public fascination generates interest and funding, drawing new generations of linguists, computer scientists, and historians to the puzzle, each hoping to be the one to finally separate the captivating fiction from the incredible truth. The Voynich Manuscript is no longer just a book. It is a cultural phenomenon, a mirror reflecting our enduring desire for mystery and our timeless fascination with the idea that there are still wonders in the world waiting to be solved. Yet the most publicized modern assault on the Voynich enigma arrived in 2018, when a team of computer scientists from the University of Alberta deployed the power of artificial intelligence against the ancient text. Their approach was both novel and perfectly suited to the 21st century. They used an algorithm designed for language identification, training it on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, translated into over 400 different languages. The idea was to let the machine find statistical patterns invisible to the human eye, to see which known language the bizarre structure of Voynichese most closely resembled. After processing the data, the AI delivered its stunning verdict. The underlying language was most likely Hebrew. Furthermore, it hypothesized that the manuscript was constructed using an alphabetic cipher with omitted vowels, a common feature in ancient Hebrew script. For a moment, headlines around the world exploded with the news. It seemed the centuries-old mystery had finally been solved by a thinking machine. But the initial euphoria quickly gave way to a more complicated reality. When researchers attempted to apply this model, manually translating the text using the proposed rules, the results were deeply puzzling. The translated phrases were largely incoherent, often reading like a jumble of unrelated words. For a page depicting celestial bodies the algorithm produced, she made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me. For a page of botanical drawings, it yielded farmer's wife, she of the fire, she of the air. These phrases felt less like a meaningful translation and more like the chaotic output of a predictive text generator. The problem highlighted a critical limitation of artificial intelligence in this context. An AI is exceptionally skilled at identifying statistical patterns and correlations, but it possesses no inherent understanding of meaning, context, or grammar. It can suggest that the text behaves like Hebrew, but it cannot confirm that the resulting sentences actually mean anything in Hebrew. The breakthrough was ultimately a fascinating data point, a clue that may point toward a Semitic language influence, but it was far from the definitive decipherment the world had hoped for. Beyond AI-driven linguistic analysis, other cutting-edge technologies are being applied to the manuscript's physicality rather than its text, and here the results have been more concretely illuminating. Multispectral imaging, a technique that captures light frequencies far beyond the visible spectrum, has been used to scrutinize the parchment with incredible detail. This process has revealed a host of previously invisible features, from subtle corrections made by the scribe to faint sketches hidden beneath the finished illustrations. Most intriguingly, it has brought to light those erased ownership inscriptions, like the ghostly signature of Jacobus Horsaki de Tepanek, providing invaluable clues to the book's journey through history. This technology doesn't claim to read the words, but it reads the history of the object itself, adding crucial chapters to the biography of this mysterious book and confirming its authentic medieval provenance. Other researchers are employing complex network analysis, a method used to map relationships in everything from social media to scientific citations. By treating the Voynich script as a complex network where characters influence which characters can follow them, scientists have gained a deeper appreciation for its intricate internal structure. This analysis confirms that the text is not random. It follows a set of sophisticated, consistent rules governing how its components can be combined. This kind of research may not produce a translation, but it helps narrow the field of possible theories by ruling out simple ciphers or hoaxes, and points toward either a highly sophisticated cipher system or a genuinely unknown language with its own complex grammar. So, do these high-tech efforts bring us closer to a solution? The answer is both yes and no. They have undoubtedly brought us closer to understanding the nature of the puzzle. We now know with even greater certainty that the text is a coherent system, not a forgery. We have a clearer picture of its physical history and its creation. But in terms of actually reading the book, these technologies have, so far, added new layers of profound mystery. They have shown us that the solution is unlikely to be found through a simple substitution cipher or by linking it to a single known language. The failure of the AI to produce a coherent translation suggests that if the underlying language is Hebrew or any known tongue, the cipher protecting it is of a fiendish complexity that we have not yet begun to unravel. These modern tools have not yet provided the key, but they have given us a much better diagram of the lock, revealing it to be even more elaborate and brilliantly constructed than we ever imagined. The mystery endures not because we lack the technology, but because the mind that created it was so far ahead of its time, crafting a puzzle that continues to defy the very peak of our modern analytical power. So if the manuscript is a genuine, meaningful work from the early 15th century, the question becomes almost unavoidable: who on earth was capable of such a thing? We are not looking for just a scholar or an artist, but a true polymath, a person who possessed deep botanical knowledge, the skill to create intricate astronomical diagrams, an understanding of human biology, a facility for complex ciphers or constructed languages, and the artistic talent to render it all on priceless vellum. This was a mind operating at the very peak of Renaissance possibility, a figure who should by all rights be famous, and yet history offers no clear name. The search for the author has become a grand historical detective story, with clues pointing in a dozen different directions, each candidate bringing their own fascinating story and set of skills to the table. One of the earliest and most enduring candidates is the man Wilfrid Voynich himself believed in, the 13th century English friar Roger Bacon. As we've discussed, this theory was ultimately undone by radiocarbon dating, but its initial appeal is understandable. Bacon was a visionary, a man who wrote about flying machines, powerful lenses, and the need for scientists to use cryptography to protect their work from a suspicious church. He was precisely the type OF Chinese letter THINKER1 could imagine creating a book of secrets centuries ahead of its time. While he couldn't have penned the physical book we have, the idea persists that the Voynich could be a later copy of a lost Baconian original, preserving his revolutionary ideas in an unbreakable code. This theory connects the manuscript to a known genius, providing a satisfyingly grand origin story, even if the evidence is purely circumstantial. Moving into the correct time period, another compelling figure is Leon Battista Alberti, an Italian Renaissance humanist, author, artist, and architect, and crucially, one of the founders of Western cryptography. In 1466, Alberti invented the polyalphabetic cipher, a revolutionary encryption method that was centuries ahead of its time. He was also deeply interested in a vast range of scientific and natural subjects. A mind like his, capable of both profound artistic expression and groundbreaking cryptographic innovation, is exactly the kind that could have conceived of the Voynich Manuscript. The theory suggests he may have created it as a demonstration of his new cipher, a proof of concept so advanced that it remains unbroken to this day. The manuscript's mix of art and science would be a perfect reflection of Alberti's own diverse genius. Then there are the more overtly mystical candidates. John Dee, the renowned Elizabethan mathematician, astrologer, and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, was obsessed with the occult and cryptography and owned one of the largest libraries in England. His partner, the scoundrel Edward Kelly, claimed the ability to communicate with angels through a language called Enochian. While the Voynich predates them, it's easy to imagine either man, especially Dee, being not just an owner but the author of a similar work. However, the carbon dating firmly places the book's creation before their lifetimes, making them passionate owners and perhaps propagators of its legend, but not its creators. Shifting focus from famous individuals to skilled professions opens up another possibility. What if the author wasn't a famous polymath but a highly skilled, anonymous group? The text's division into two distinct hands, as identified by Prescott Currier, supports this idea. It could have been a collaboration between a learned physician and a talented scribe, or perhaps a project within a convent or monastery where women, who are often expert herbalists and illustrators, had the knowledge and quiet space to produce such a work. A team could pool the necessary expertise, one person contributing botanical knowledge, another astronomical charts, a third adept at ciphers, resulting in a composite masterpiece that no single person of the time could have produced alone. This would explain the incredible range of knowledge on display and the consistent execution across different sections. The most likely scenario, however, may be that we are searching for someone history has forgotten. The author may have been a courtier in the Duchy of Milan, a Jewish physician fleeing persecution who encoded his knowledge for safety, or a forgotten alchemist in the employ of a northern Italian prince. The required skills, while extraordinary, were not unheard of in the vibrant intellectual courts of the early Renaissance. This person may have been famous in their time, but their reputation was lost to wars, plagues, or simply the passage of centuries. The very fact of the manuscript's existence is proof that such a person did live. Their identity is a gap in our historical record, a silence where we expect to find a name, and the Voynich Manuscript is the staggering, beautiful proof of everything we have lost. The search for the author, in the end, may be less about finding a specific name and more about understanding the rich, complex, and often secretive intellectual world that made such a mysterious creation not just possible but perhaps inevitable. Faced with the impenetrable wall of the text itself, Linguists and cryptographers have spent decades proposing a spectrum of theories to explain what language might lie at the heart of the mystery. The hypotheses range from the historically plausible to the wildly speculative, each constructing a different version of the author and their intent, yet each facing its own formidable set of objections that have prevented any consensus from forming. One of the most enduring ideas is that the manuscript is written in a natural but extinct language, a tongue that vanished from history without a trace. Proponents of this theory suggest it could represent a pre-Indo-European language from an isolated community, perhaps a remnant of a much older culture that preserved its knowledge in this single, unique volume. The statistical properties that mimic natural language support this, and it would explain why the text doesn't correspond to any known linguistic family. However, this theory struggles with the manuscript's own context. The illustrations, particularly the astronomical and Zodiac sections, are deeply rooted in Western European medieval tradition. It seems highly unlikely that an isolated community with a completely unique language would possess such specific and sophisticated knowledge of 15th century European cosmology and iconography. Furthermore, the complete absence of any other reference to this language or people in the historical record makes it a difficult proposition to prove. A more focused version of this theory posits that the language is not entirely extinct, but a rare or constructed dialect used by a specific secretive group. This is where the compelling connection to John Dee and Edward Kelly's Enochian emerges. Enochian was a language the two men claimed to have received from angels, a complex system with its own grammar and syntax. While the Voynich predates Dee and Kelly, the idea is that it could represent an earlier, similar attempt to create a divine or angelic language for ceremonial magic or spiritual communication. The problem, once again, is the carbon dating. The manuscript is too old to be Enochian, and no other historical records mention such an elaborate linguistic tradition before the 16th century. While it captures the imagination, this theory feels more like a historical echo than a direct link. Perhaps the most popular category of theories falls under the umbrella of cipher-based approaches. The idea here is that the underlying language is something very familiar, like Latin, Italian, or German, but it has been transformed by a sophisticated cipher system. This isn't a simple substitution cipher where one letter equals another. That was easily ruled out by early analysts. The proposed ciphers are far more complex. One leading idea is that it is a verbose cipher, where a single plaintext letter is expanded into several ciphertext characters according to a set of rules. This could account for the wordy and repetitive nature of the text. Another proposal is that it uses a cipher based on a numerical key or a cipher wheel, similar to what was later invented by Leon Battista Alberti. This would have been an astonishingly advanced technique for the time, but not impossible for a genius cryptographer. The major challenge for all cipher theories is the flawless, natural language statistical profile. Most complex ciphers, even good ones, introduce slight statistical anomalies that can be detected. The Voynich text's perfect adherence to Zipf's law and its intricate internal word structure have so far resisted every known cipher model from its era. It behaves less like a locked box and more like an organic entity. This has led some researchers down a different path entirely, the possibility that Voynichese is a constructed language or a philosophical language. In the 17th century, there was a movement among scholars like John Wilkins to create perfect, logical languages free from the ambiguities of natural tongues. These languages were often designed with classified vocabularies, where words for related things like types of plants would share a common root. Some argue the Voynich could be a very early, pioneering example of this concept. The repetitive word stems and the organization of the text by subject matter could support this. The author might have been a visionary attempting to create a universal language for science, categorizing the natural world in a new, logical way. The hurdle for this theory is the sheer ambition it implies. Creating a completely new language with its own consistent grammar and a vocabulary vast enough to fill over 200 pages is a monumental task. For a single individual in the 15th century to have done this and to have left no other evidence of such a monumental project seems almost as incredible as the manuscript itself. Each hypothesis, from the lost language to the verbose cipher to the philosophical construct, paints a different portrait of the author, a lost tribesman, a cryptographic genius, or a utopian linguist. Yet each portrait remains frustratingly blurry, its details obscured by the very same evidence that supports it. The statistical patterns suggest a natural language, but the content and context argue against it. The complexity suggests an advanced cipher, but it lacks the telltale signs of one. The structure suggests a constructed language, but its creation would be an unprecedented feat. This is the circular labyrinth of Voynich linguistics. Every path of inquiry seems to lead back to the central, unanswerable question, proving that the text is not just a code to be broken, but a profound intellectual mirror reflecting our own assumptions about language, history, and the very limits of what we can know about the past. Perhaps the most compelling and holistic framework for understanding the Voynich manuscript lies not in the search for a specific language, but in the rich, symbolic world of Renaissance alchemy. To the modern eye, the book's illustrations appear bizarre and nonsensical, but to an initiate of this ancient art, they might read as a clear, albeit complex, visual guide to the great work, the alchemical quest for the philosopher's stone and spiritual enlightenment. This interpretation doesn't ask us to see the plants as real or the baths as literal plumbing. Instead, it invites us to view every image as a metaphor for a profound inner transformation, a hidden language of symbols where matter and spirit are inseparably fused. Let's start with the most iconic imagery, the intricate networks of green tubes and the nude figures or nymphs bathing within them. In a literal sense, this makes little sense. But through an alchemical lens, this entire section could represent the crucial stage of dissolution, known as the solutio. The vibrant green fluid is likely not water, but the legendary prima materia, the primordial, life-giving substance that is the raw material for all creation. The nymphs themselves may not be people, but personifications of different substances or states of matter as they undergo purification. Their immersion and circulation through this green, interconnected system symbolizes the dissolution of the base self, the breaking down of the old, impure form to prepare for its rebirth into a higher, perfected state. The entire apparatus, then, is not a biological schematic but a spiritual one, mapping the circulation of divine energy through the soul of the adept. The botanical section finds a powerful new meaning under this theory. These impossible plants, with their oddly specific roots, leaves, and flowers, may not be intended for a physical herb garden. Instead, each one could represent a different stage or ingredient in the alchemical process, given a plant-like form to aid in meditation and understanding. A root that resembles a claw might symbolize the fixed, earthly beginning of the work. A flower that looks like a star could represent the celestial, volatile nature of the final stage. The text accompanying each plant wouldn't be a description of its medicinal use, but a complex set of instructions or philosophical musings on what that particular symbol means and how it integrates into the broader journey of the great work. The book becomes a symbolic herbal, a catalogue of spiritual concepts rather than physical specimens. This perspective elegantly explains the manuscript's most frustrating contradictions. The text is repetitive and highly structured because it might be describing recursive, ritualistic processes or listing the attributes of symbolic ingredients. Its statistical properties resemble a natural language because it is a language, a highly specialized, symbolic one used by a secretive community. The fusion of astronomy, biology, and botany is no longer a mystery, it is the very point. Alchemy was a holistic philosophy that saw the human body microcosm as a perfect reflection of the universe macrocosm. Therefore, a chart of the zodiac was directly relevant to a process of internal purification, and a diagram of interconnected baths was a map of cosmic energy flows. The theory also provides a powerful motive for the extraordinary level of encryption. The secrets of alchemy were considered dangerously powerful. To the uninitiated, the pursuit of transmuting base metals into gold was a threat to the economic order, and the quest for spiritual enlightenment outside the strict doctrine of the Church was heresy. An alchemist possessing a comprehensive guide to the great work would have every reason to encode it in the most impenetrable cipher imaginable, using a layer of visual symbols and a layer of undecipherable text. The book wasn't meant to confuse, it was meant to reveal, but only to those who had been taught how to read its unique language. The Voynich Manuscript, in this light, is not a hoax or a nonsense book. It is a sacred text, a workbook for the soul's journey toward perfection, and its enduring mystery is the ultimate testament to the success of its author's desperate, brilliant secrecy. Perhaps the most grounded and compelling theory is also the most human, that this bewildering book is not a work of magic or alien botany, but a practical, encrypted guide to the natural world, a master herbalist's lifework locked away to protect its immense value. Imagine a 15th century physician, an apothecary, or a midwife who had spent a lifetime wandering the countryside, carefully observing the properties of plants, experimenting with remedies, and compiling a vast, unparalleled knowledge of healing. In an era where a single effective recipe for treating a fever or healing a wound could mean the difference between life and death for an entire community, such knowledge was a form of power. And power in any age needs protection. This herbalist, fearing that their hard-won discoveries could be stolen by a rival or condemned by an suspicious church authority, would have had a powerful motive to encode their work. We know this happened with other scientific texts of the period. The famed Renaissance artist and inventor Leonardo da Vinci famously wrote his private notebooks in mirror script, a simple cipher meant to keep his ideas from prying eyes. The Voynich Manuscript could be the same concept taken to an extreme level of sophistication. The fantastical plants, then, aren't inventions, they are encrypted diagrams. A single illustration might be a composite, combining the root of one known medicinal herb, the leaf of another, and the flower of a third. To an untrained observer, it looks like a single impossible plant. But to an initiate who possessed the key, it would be a clear instruction. For this remedy, use the root of mandrake, the leaves of mint, and the flowers of chamomile. The text would then provide the precise instructions for preparation and dosage, the true secrets hidden in plain sight. This theory elegantly explains the manuscript's most perplexing sections. The pharmaceutical pages with their rows of jars and isolated plant parts suddenly make perfect sense as an apothecary's reference chart. The intricate biological sections with women bathing in green tubes could represent not literal plumbing, but diagrams for sophisticated hydrotherapy treatments, or even symbolic representations of how different herbal preparations circulate through and purify the body's humors, a common belief in medieval medicine. Even the astronomical charts could be tied to medical astrology, detailing the optimal times to harvest certain plants under specific planetary alignments to maximize their potency. The need for such extreme secrecy becomes clear when we consider the perilous landscape of medieval knowledge. The line between healer and heretic was dangerously thin. A woman with exceptional knowledge of herbs could be celebrated as a wise woman or accused of witchcraft. A physician promoting a radical new treatment could be hailed as a genius or excommunicated for challenging established doctrines. A book containing powerful and therefore valuable medical secrets would be a target for theft. By encoding it, the author wasn't being paranoid, they were being prudent. They were ensuring their life's work would only benefit those they deemed worthy, those they personally entrusted with the cipher. The tragedy, of course, is that this key appears to have died with them, leaving behind a treasure chest of potential healing knowledge that we can see but cannot access, a library of cures lost to time, preserved in a beautiful, silent, and utterly frustrating vault of vellum and ink. But beyond the historical intrigue and the cryptographic dead ends, there's a deeper question that keeps us coming back to the Voynich Manuscript, a question that lies not in the parchment or the pigment, but within ourselves. Why does this particular puzzle, above all others, hold such a powerful and enduring grip on our collective imagination? The answer may have less to do with the book's secrets and more to do with the fundamental wiring of the human brain. We are, by nature, pattern-seeking creatures. From the earliest age, we look at the clouds and sea faces, we connect stars into constellations, and we find narratives in the random noise of everyday life. This instinct is a survival mechanism. It's how we learn to predict the changing seasons, identify predators in the brush, and build complex societies. The Voynich Manuscript presents us with the ultimate pattern-seeking challenge. Its text is visually consistent, its illustrations are meticulously detailed, it feels like it should make sense. It practically screams that there is a pattern to be found, and our brains simply cannot accept that the pattern might be forever beyond our reach. This cognitive itch, the need to resolve the ambiguity and complete the picture, is what transforms a historical curiosity into a personal obsession. This drive is amplified by something known as the zygonic effect, a psychological principle that states people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed ones. Our minds hate loose ends, an unfinished story, an unresolved chord, an unanswered question. They create a state of cognitive tension that demands closure. The Voynich is the greatest loose end in the history of code-breaking. It's a 600-year-old cliffhanger. Every failed attempt to solve it, from the brilliant to the bizarre, doesn't diminish its allure, it heightens it. Each failure is another episode in a serialized mystery, reinforcing the tension and ensuring we keep it active in our minds, waiting for the next potential solver to step forward and provide the resolution we all crave. It's the reason we can't just file it away as a historical oddity. Our brains won't let us. Furthermore, the manuscript acts as a perfect Rorschach test for our own beliefs and biases. Its profound ambiguity creates a vacuum, and into that vacuum we pour our own hopes, theories, and visions of the past. A devout Catholic might see a lost religious text. An enthusiast of the paranormal sees proof of ancient astronauts or advanced lost civilizations. A historian of science sees an encrypted medical text. The book's blank slate quality allows it to reflect our deepest desires for the world to be more mysterious, more magical, or more intellectually sophisticated than we previously believed. We are not just trying to discover what the author meant. On some level, we are trying to confirm what we already believe to be true about history, humanity, and the boundaries of knowledge. This personal investment transforms the scholarly pursuit into an emotional one. This emotional connection is fueled by the very real, very human stories of those who have dedicated their lives to the puzzle. We don't just see the cold analysis of William Friedman. We see the profound frustration of a genius who cracked wartime codes but met his match in a medieval book. We see the tragic obsession of individuals who spent decades on a single theory, their personal identities becoming intertwined with the manuscript's mystery. These stories add a layer of pathos and drama. They remind us that this isn't just an intellectual game. It's a story of human ambition, perseverance, and sometimes heartbreak. We root for the underdog, for the next lone wolf researcher who might see what everyone else has missed, because on some level, we all want to be that person. The Voynich represents the ultimate underdog story, the solitary thinker against the impossible puzzle. Ultimately, the Voynich Manuscript endures because it is more than a book, it is a symbol. It represents the perfect, untouchable mystery. In a modern world where almost any question can be answered with a few keystrokes, where satellites have mapped every inch of the globe and science has explained so much of our universe, the Voynich stands as a monument to the unknown. It is a comforting reminder that there are still things just beyond our grasp, puzzles that resist the glare of our technology and the force of our logic. It satisfies a deep, almost spiritual need for wonder. To solve it would be a monumental achievement, but to solve it would also, in a way, diminish its power. Its perpetual unsolvability guarantees its immortality. It will always be there, patiently waiting, inviting each new generation to sit down, look at its strange pages, and for a moment believe that they might be the one to finally hear its whispered secret. Yet for all the theories, the high-tech analysis, and the centuries of relentless scrutiny, the Voynich Manuscript remains a fortress with its gates still locked. We may understand its walls better, but the core mysteries inside are as protected as ever. The first and perhaps most fundamental of these is its exact origin. Radiocarbon dating gives us a beautiful, precise window of time, the early 15th century, but it offers no geography. Was this book born in a northern Italian scriptorium under the patronage of a Renaissance duke fascinated by the occult? Did it emerge from the scholarly circles of a German monastery, or perhaps from the vibrant, multicultural court of a Central European emperor? The vellum and the inks are European, but the intellectual inspiration feels unmoored from any single tradition. Without a verifiable place of creation, we lack the cultural context that could be the master key to everything else. Then there is the author, the ghost in the machine. Who was this person or persons? We are searching for a mind that could seamlessly blend advanced botany, intricate astronomy, enigmatic biology, and a cipher of devastating complexity. This suggests a figure of Leonardo-like versatility, yet no historical record mentions such a person creating such a book. The erased ownership marks only deepen this void, severing a potential link to a known historical figure like Rudolph II's physician. The possibility of multiple scribes, as suggested by the distinct courier A and B hands, makes the question even more complex. Were they a master and apprentice? A collaborative circle of alchemists, a lone genius and a hired scribe merely copying symbols they didn't understand? The author's identity is the silent heart of the mystery, and without it, we cannot begin to comprehend their motive. This leads directly to the Sphinx's riddle of the manuscript, the script itself. Is it a cipher, and if so, of what unbelievable sophistication? Is it a lost natural language that somehow encoded very European concepts? Or is it something else entirely, a constructed, philosophical language designed for a new system of classification? Or even a form of musical or mathematical notation that we are entirely misreading as text? The statistical properties confirm it is a system, but they cannot tell us what kind of system it is. Every proposed solution, from verbose ciphers to abbreviated Latin to the AI's suggestion of Hebrew, has crumbled under the weight of its own inconsistencies. The script is the lock, and we are still fumbling in the dark for the right key, unsure even of what the key is made from. And finally, we circle back to the ultimate question: what is this book for? Its true purpose is the final, gleaming secret. Was it a sacred text for a secret society, a guide to spiritual enlightenment so potent it had to be hidden in plain sight? Was it the notebook of a scientific revolutionary, protecting discoveries that threatened the established order? Or was it the private, encrypted herbal of a master healer, a Bible of practical medicine meant only for their eyes? The purpose defines the content. Without knowing the goal, we cannot judge if any potential translation is correct. A sentence that seems like nonsense if we expect a medical recipe might be profound poetry if we expect a spiritual allegory. We are trying to translate a book without knowing its genre. These are not small gaps, they are canyons that separate us from understanding. and it is this vast, uncharted territory of the unknown that truly defines the Voynich Manuscript's legacy. It is not a puzzle that is simply difficult, it is a puzzle that constantly redefines its own rules. Just when one avenue of inquiry seems promising, another piece of evidence emerges to block the path. This relentless mystery is what transforms the book from a historical artifact into a living legend. It is a conversation across 6 centuries, a continuous challenge issued to every generation. It invites us to project our own ideas onto its blank canvas, to test the limits of our own knowledge and imagination. The manuscript's greatest secret may not be hidden in its text, but in its unique ability to make us wonder, to force us to question what we think we know about history, language, and the incredible ingenuity of the human mind. It guards its secrets not out of malice, but perhaps to remind us that some wonders are not meant to be solved, only to be pondered. Looking ahead, the future of the Voynich Manuscript lies at the intersection of emerging technology, historical serendipity, and perhaps a complete reimagining of what we're even looking at. The traditional tools of the cryptographer and linguist have been exhausted. The path forward will likely require something far more advanced or entirely unexpected. One promising avenue is the continued development of artificial intelligence and machine learning. While previous AI attempts provided intriguing but ultimately unverifiable results, future systems trained on vastly larger datasets of medieval languages, ciphers, and symbolic systems might detect patterns no human could ever perceive. Imagine an algorithm that doesn't just compare the text to known languages, but analyzes it in the context of every known alchemical tract, herbal compendium, and astrological manual from the 15th century, searching for conceptual parallels rather than linguistic ones. This wouldn't be a simple translation program, but a digital detective capable of reconstructing a lost worldview. Beyond pure data analysis, new imaging technologies could provide the physical key we've been missing. Advanced hyperspectral imaging, which captures data across the entire light spectrum, might reveal hidden underdrawings, erased annotations, or even traces of the original author's notes hidden beneath the surface of the vellum. A complete, non-invasive molecular analysis of the inks could determine if different recipes were used in various sections, potentially confirming the involvement of multiple authors or identifying the geographical origin of the materials, finally pinning down where this thing was made. The most tantalizing possibility, the historian's version of a lottery win, would be the discovery of a forgotten ledger in some European archive, a book list from the library of Rudolf II, a diary entry from a visiting scholar, or even a personal letter that casually mentions the strange, encrypted book and provides a single, crucial clue about its content or purpose. History is filled with such chance discoveries, and the right document could instantly collapse 6 centuries of speculation into concrete fact. Perhaps the real breakthrough won't come from a machine or a hidden document, but from a fundamental shift in perspective. We may have been asking the wrong question all along. Instead of "what language is this?" we might need to ask, is this a language at all? What if the Voynich script is not encoding words but something else entirely? Some researchers have proposed it could be a form of musical notation for a meditative chant, a system of numerical codes referencing other texts, or a complex set of instructions for creating visual symbols rather than conveying phonetic information. Decoding it would then require us to stop thinking like linguists and start thinking like composers, mathematicians, or artists. This paradigm shift is often the key to solving the world's greatest puzzles. It wasn't better shovels that found Troy, but a poet's reinterpretation of myth as history. If the code is ever broken, the implications would be seismic, rippling across multiple fields of study. For historians, it would be like turning on a light in a darkened room of the Renaissance. We wouldn't just get a translated text, we would gain an unprecedented window into the mind of a medieval thinker, revealing their methods, their sources, and their unspoken philosophies. It could rewrite our understanding of early botany, astronomy, and medicine, revealing a level of sophistication or a lineage of knowledge we never knew existed. For cryptographers, it would be the recovery of a lost masterpiece, a cipher system so elegant and powerful that it remained secure for half a millennium. Its techniques could inform modern encryption, a fascinating feedback loop where a medieval mind teaches us something new about secrecy. And on a human level, it would be the satisfying end to the ultimate underdog story, a triumph of persistence and intellect that would capture the world's imagination. Yet, we must also make peace with the very real possibility that the Voynich Manuscript is destined to remain an enigma. Its defenses have proven resilient against everything thrown at it, from wartime codebreakers to artificial intelligence. It's possible the key was something ephemeral and oral tradition, a unique cipher wheel made of perishable material, or a mental system that died with its creator. In this case, its meaning is permanently lost to time, but even if it is never decoded, the manuscript's value is undiminished. It endures as the purest symbol of the unknown, a permanent reminder of the limits of our knowledge and the enduring power of mystery itself. It teaches us humility, curiosity, and the thrill of the chase. Its silent pages continue to challenge each new generation, not to find an answer, but to appreciate the profound beauty of the question. And so our journey through the bewildering world of the Voynich Manuscript comes to a close, though the mystery itself remains as wide open as ever. We've wandered through a garden of impossible plants, navigated star charts of unknown constellations, and tried to make sense of bathing nymphs in a complex network of green tubes. We've followed the trail of its rediscovery, from a dusty chest in an Italian villa to the brilliant minds of modern codebreakers, and explored theories ranging from alchemical masterwork to an elaborate Renaissance hoax. We've seen scientific tests confirm its age and statistical analyses prove its text is no mere gibberish, yet the words themselves continue to guard their secret with impeccable silence. It is a book that offers everything and reveals nothing, a siren's call to the curious that has endured for over 6 centuries. What makes this manuscript so special, so uniquely captivating, is that it is far more than just an unsolved puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our own deep-seated need to seek patterns, to find answers, and to connect with a human mind from a distant past. It represents the thrilling possibility that there are still wonders in this world that defy explanation, secrets that have not yet been surrendered to the relentless march of progress. In an age where information is instant and almost every question has a digital answer, the Voynich stands as a glorious exception, a permanent monument to the unknown. It reminds us that history is not a closed book, but a living, breathing story with missing chapters we are still trying to write. The quest is not over. It simply passes now to you. What do you think it is? A secret herbal, an alchemical guide, the work of a lone genius, or a collaborative cipher? Let us know your wildest theory, your most grounded suspicion, or your completely out-of-this-world idea down in the comments below. The conversation is what keeps this mystery alive, and your perspective might be the one we've all been missing. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into history's most resilient enigma, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the forgotten, the strange, and the unexplained. Thank you for watching, for wondering, and for keeping the spirit of curiosity burning bright. After all, the world needs more explorers, and the greatest adventures often begin with a single, unanswerable question.